right. So I've got an article here that I found over at WorldNet Daily, and this is an article that just really caught my attention. And why is that? Because it is about that there's a coalition Supreme Court. Well, I didn't get the headline on here. It said arguments were filed in a fight over forced disclosure of a digital password. So what is this about? Well, the Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate one's self includes a right to withhold from police a cell phone passcode, and contends a brief filed with the U.S. Supreme Court. So here's what's going on. The Rutherford Institute, along with the Cordell Institute of Washington University and Americans for Prosperity Foundation, filed the brief in defense of Robert Andrews, an officer with the Essex County, New Jersey Sheriff's Office. The Fifth Amendment, this is what they're saying, was intended to guard against government attempts to overreach its authority, said constitutional attorney John W. Whitehead, president of the Rutherford Institute. Paramount among the rights enshrined in the Fifth Amendment is the right to remain silent, not be forced to assist the government or any of its agents in prosecuting oneself. Andrews was accused of passing information about a narcotics investigation to the suspect in the case. Investigators arrested him and seized his iPhones, believing they contained calls, text messages, and other information related to the suspect about how to avoid persecution or prosecution. Did I say persecution? However, the investigators were unable to unlock Andrews' phones without his passcode. At trial, state prosecutors filed a motion to compel Andrews to divulge the passcodes for his iPhones so that they could access the information stored on the phones, Rutherford said. Andrews objected to the motion, arguing that forcing him to divulge the passcodes would violate the guarantee against compelled self-incrimination contained in the Fifth Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. The case could set a significant standard for privacy now that the world is in a digital age. The brief contends that the government's efforts to force individuals to disclose passcodes for their electronic devices violates the Fifth. A ruling from the New Jersey Supreme Court, the brief argues, is in opposition to the Supreme Court's unequivocal recognition that exposing the contents of a cell phone or computer to the government is more harmful to privacy than even the most exhaustive search of a house. The trial court admitted the information on Andrews' phone might incriminate him, but it ruled he could be forced to provide the codes because the court assumed it was a foregone conclusion that there was evidence there and Andrews had no right to withhold access. Andrews appealed to the Supreme Court. So that's the gist of this article. There's more there we can bring out here in a moment, but let's bring back Eddie and Tammy and Randall Bingeworthy, and also Miss Sandy Craig. I want to get your thoughts about this, because how many times do they get into cell phones and into devices and they use the information that's on that to incriminate the owner of the device? And I mean, give some thought about it. We've just come to think that this is just normal for investigators to do this, and they do that, and they do find it stuff, and it does hurt one's defense. So what do you think about what the Rutherford Institute and others are saying about Fifth Amendment rights?
Well, I think it's a good reason to put a passcode on your devices. I mean, not that you necessarily have anything to hide, but they can find anything. They can, bring up charges on any reason these days. So probably a good idea to have one.
Yeah. Okay.
You have the case of the two Muslims that was it in California or Texas that had committed the murders.
Texas. I think it was
no, I think it was California, because they had there was one in Texas with the military base.
Guy. That's what I was.
But this was in California, where there was the big battle between Apple and the FBI as to wanting the codes for their phones. And the FBI, it was like, well, we don't care. We'll get it anyway. And they did. Apple never gave, to my knowledge, Apple never gave them the codes, because these were two Muslim terrorists they were trying to protect. And, but the FBI said, hey, don't sweat it. We've got it. They got it. So even if you do use passcodes or anything, I think, they can get whatever they want from your device.
Yeah, all they got to do is go to NSA.
The funny thing is, the only way to avoid that, don't have a smartphone.
You can't have anything less than a smartphone anymore because none of the carriers will
support the
flip phones anymore.
Exactly.
His sister just recently had to get a smartphone because they finally told her we're not supporting that phone anymore.
Interesting.
We have those flip phones, so those won't work anymore.
Well, the technology is changing so much, and with that technology, why is because they have the tracing that's all that they can't do any other way.
Exactly.
And why support something that many people just don't care? I mean, they'd rather have a smartphone anyway. So why support something and have write the software and all that expense that goes into it if that market's declining? I mean, I think that's probably part of its market, but when we look at it, it's like, but I don't want to participate. Mark, what are your thoughts here on the Fifth Amendment and the right to not self-incriminate? And yet, it seems like for many years since smartphones have come out that the law enforcement have been using this. But even in this thought of, because one side of it says, well, what about these terrorists that could be planning stuff and we can't figure out what's going on and what they might be planning, and we need to get into their stuff to protect the general population. But on the other hand, of course, they may not be Americans, but on the other hand, if you're an American, you have constitutional rights of protection. What are your thoughts?
Talking about any of this stuff scares the hell out of me. On talking about it on YouTube, I anymore. I don't know what we can say or what we can't say. So I'm getting. As a matter of fact, I have now created a place on the website that is watch on the website only, where we're going to start doing news reports like this on there. Seriously, I've already started it. So anyway, you'll receive more about that later. Because I teach on the Constitution, my brain goes back to the days of when they actually made up the Constitution, and they're all sitting around and wondering, okay, what should we put in here, and who's got ideas on this, and okay, well, there's going to be a day when they're going to have cell phones. And they're going to need to, we're going to need to have laws covering cell phones and Muslims breaking into military bases. And so we need to have laws against this. We need to put something in the Constitution against this. There's these days, everything changes so stinking fast that even Congress and the lawmakers and everything can't keep up with it. And so they keep, like what you're talking about, they're bringing this to court and they have to make a decision based on it. Well, there's too many scenarios to have to cover. If we say we can't get in this guy's cell phone or he has to give us this, then we're violating somebody else's right that they didn't need to do this. But because we made this law about, getting into this cell phone, then when we come up to here, well, that lawyer's going to use this law to open up something that we didn't need to open up. You see what I'm saying is that it's everything is so complicated anymore. Everything, there are so many technological things out there that and different things that are happening with terrorists and all those things that it's literally next to impossible for them to keep up with everything. And the lawyers of these days, to keep up with what one court said that they could do about this and another court said that they could do about this. I feel bad for them because I think there's where your anarchy's coming from. There's where your people that can't keep up with it are coming from. I can't keep up with it. I mean, I don't want to make our Constitution 10 times bigger than what it is, because then nobody will understand. And I don't think anybody understands it anyway. We're in a different culture. We're in a different time period than what it was when they made it up in the first place. But it's just too complicated. It really is. So what do I think about them getting into the guy's cell phone? I don't know. It's one of those things where every instance is different than the last instance, and you have to make a decision based on what you need to do to solve this situation. And on top of that, one of the main things I've learned is even in court proceedings, you don't have all the information. You're only basing what you're making a decision on with what's brought forth into a courtroom. And a lot more anymore, they can get an injunction against bringing in certain evidence to make a right decision in a court proceeding. You see what I'm saying? So even in court proceedings where you have to make a decision based on the stinking cell phone, you don't have all the information that you need, and there's just too many different scenarios. There's too many different ways to go about it. It's as confused as everything I just said.
Well, I personally believe that just as the court system is supposed to work, it is done. So unless you're proven guilty, now I know what they actually do. I'm not talking about what they're doing, but what it's supposed to be. Unless you're guilty beyond any doubt, then you go free. But they did that with the full knowledge that some that are guilty may go free, but it's better to preserve the freedom of those who are innocent. Now, that's not what's necessarily put into action, but by the same token, I believe that no, they shouldn't have access. They do, but they shouldn't have access to our private devices and lives. Those are our private. And now, of course, they say they can even access your thoughts and things like that. So, and then you've got Minority Report going on and things like that. But
pre-crime.
Right. So in my belief, no, they should not have access to the people's cell phones. That is private, that is personal, that is incriminating, or maybe it's not, but it can still be misconstrued because as Eddie said earlier, they'll take anything, they can twist it and make it to what they want to be. But the bottom line is, I would rather let a few get by and preserve our freedom. Because just as I would rather a few guilty get by to preserve the innocent, but right now our prisons are filled with innocents because it's now guilty until proven innocent. And unless you have a minimum of 250 grand, you are going to prison.
Well, and it's not, and it's no longer till proven innocent, because now it's like, well,
you don't get the opportunity to prove
they plea bargain, and they don't get to prove it in court because it costs too much. So these people, they say, well, I'll just take a plea bargain because I can't defend myself.
And that's where we are. So you go to, even if you're innocent and you could have proven you're innocent, you don't get the opportunity. So I would rather if you guilty go free than bring the innocent to persecution and prosecution.
Well, the people who perpetrate things and get away with it here on earth are not going to get away with it when they stand before our Heavenly Father. So, it may seem like they're getting away with it right now, but they're not going to in the end.
That's right.
But my biggest concern is for the average you and me and the people. Right. It's only the wealthy. And here's the deal. The wealthy can get away with anything they want and even declare it and never face anything. And it's the normal guys.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
So really what these devices are an extension of ourselves, of our thoughts. And
exactly.
And instead of keeping it all up here, which a lot of it is, it's just we put it on a device and it becomes an extension, and it's not up for public use or knowledge. So, yeah, and it's particularly when they can take any type of information, as you said, I'm going to reemphasize this, anything, and use that. Well, we didn't have a case here, but I found this on there, so let's just press this because we're gonna nail them one way or another. And
Right.
and it was all obtained through the violation of our privacy. So,
Exactly.
all right. So I just wanted to bring that up. That article is over at World News Daily, and y'all can go check it out. It's got some more things in there to discuss.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.